You guys can see the screen. Great. So basically, where we were was we added the widget to our emulator screen here, and we customized this text to show empty. And I left you with a couple of questions, points to ponder. You can think about it. It's going to show up in your Blackboard under assignments, so you can answer it over there. Uh, what is our next job? Now, what is happening is, see, we added a stack view here, right? But where is the information that is going to belong in this stack? That's one question we need to answer. And the second question is, whether it goes here, if it's coming from Java, how do we do all of that? So that's what we are going to address now. So collections, in general, collections require certain setup to be done. So you guys will remember when we did the tic-tac-toe app, we used a certain collection. Uh, what was it that we used? Can anybody recall? How did we display the list of games? There's a certain type of collection view we used.
I think we use a fragment list to display the.
Perfect. Yeah. So we used a fragment list, basically a list. And to populate the list, we need something, right? There was a mechanism. The list itself, the view is created for us by the operating system, but what goes in it, what is displayed, all that customization happens in the code. One of the things we need is how is that, what is displayed in the list in terms of the data. And we had something called an adapter. You'll remember we had something called a list adapter. So what that adapter does is it tells when the view is being displayed, it answers questions like how many items are there, what is in the first item, what is in the second item, and all those things. And then the view takes care of scrolling and all that. So that is the normal behavior. This is the blank. Traditionally, this is done using an adapter. What happens in an app widget is you don't have the entire functionality of an app. What it displays is what is it, internally it is called a remote view. So a widget is displaying a remote view, remote in the sense that it is hosted inside another app and it is being remotely furnished by the app that actually created the widget. So for collections in widgets, like here, the example shown is the Gmail widget. For this, the way all this information would make it is what would be called the remote view service. Because this is a remote view, and within this, we are using a stack view. This is a list view. This is a list. This list needs to know all the same things that a stack would need to know. How many items are there? What is the first item? What is the second item, etc., etc. What does it look like? What is it made up of? So for example, this one item in this list here is made up of one text here in a certain font, color, etc. Another text view here that is a smaller size that shows the time, and a snippet from the email. So this layout is for each item. And then there are so many items that are being displayed. And then when it scrolls, it takes care of how to, what is the next item, bring it into the display, etc. So that's what happens. And this is all furnished through what is called a remote views service. You can actually Google it and you can find remote view service, right? So this is by definition the service to be connected to for a remote adapter to request remote views. User should extend the remote view service to provide the appropriate remote views factory. This is another keyword that we are going to use today, remote views factory. So the service itself is what it interacts with, and in Android, service is a broader concept. A service allows apps to interact with each other, one app to interact with the other. So this is what it is, an Android app service. This is a subclass of that. And within this, there is an interface called Remote Views Factory. And this is what it acts as an adapter between a remote collection view and the underlying data for that view. So what we need is we need to create a service and expose it so that when the widget is displaying, it has a way to connect to the app that is providing the widget. And not only that, within it, we need to create a view factory, which will create all the views. So this is it. Let's look at the documentation of the remote views factory. Here you will see things like get count. So how many items are there? Get item ID of an item. Loading view. So this loading view is sort of like that, the refreshing wheel or something like that. When an item is being loaded, sometimes you may have to fetch, let's say if you have a weather app which shows a widget that shows the weather for 4 different cities in one shot. Maybe you have to make an API call. Maybe you have to talk to the internet. Maybe the user is on, their data plan and it's slow connection. So while that data is being loaded, you will show the loading view. And this is what this loading view, this function will return. Get view at. This is the actual view at a certain position. So in a stack, what is at the top, what is the next, etc. In a list, what is the first item, second item, third item. This function call is what will return remote views. And there are some other functions. These are the key ones that we are going to use. And it returns, you will see an object of class remote views. That is what a widget displays. It displays objects of class remote view. And this is what is inside it. This is what can be used. So we are using a stack view. Okay. So that is in general, basically the explanation of how we will connect it. So let's go back to our Android project. We have the stack view here. We want to start connecting it. So the first thing we said is we are going to create a service. How will we do it? Oh, I will just bring up the slides and then so that it is easier for everybody to follow. These are the steps. We'll add a new file, a Java class called demo widget stack service. And we will say that this is a subclass of remote view service, the native class that the Android operating system exposes. Okay, let's do this step first. So demo widget stack service. The way we will do it is as before, you can go new Java class. You will get this, the dialog box. Demo widget stack service is what I'm going to call it because it's going to expose a service. And the superclass, we said that it is going to be a child of remote views service. Make sure that you type remote and views, not a view, remote views service. Well, that gives you auto completion, so that's perfect. So it is a subclass of this, the other settings are fine. So once you have this much information, you'll say okay, and it will add a file here. and it's going to complain. Demo widget stack service must either be declared abstract or implement abstract method, so and so. This is usual. We created it as a subclass, and that parent class is an abstract class. Abstract class meaning there are some functions which are sort of declared but not defined. So like in a function, like an interface is completely abstract. You can inherit from an interface and implement some of the functions, and then you will end up with an abstract class. It's one way of getting one. There are other ways too. So here, what we want to do is we want to give Android an opportunity to help us. So whenever you see this, you'll mouse over and you will see these possible actions, implement methods, more actions, etc. So implement methods, generally Alt Enter. If you do Alt Enter, it will give you an option to implement methods, and we'll just take that offer. And it will ask which methods to implement, and we'll say, fine, just implement this. Only one method. So it implemented a method for us. It's called on get view factory. So when it is when this service receives a message called get view factory, this is what it is going to return. It's returning now. We don't want it to return now. We actually want to return a view factory which has all these methods that we talked about. Over here, we looked at this, right? This is our remote views, okay, remote view factory, right? These methods. So we want to return an object of this class. That's what we want to return. Returning null will only result in a crash. So we need to add that. How are we going to add that? Let's go back to our slides so you have it. And it says here add a new class to the same file. And this is the convention because this is a service and it's using a factory. We will add a new class to the same file, and this one we will call the demo widget stack views factory that implements that interface documentation we were looking at. Okay, so that's what we will do here. So outside of this completely, we'll declare a class demo widget stack views factory, and this implements the interface. Remote views service. Let auto completion help you. You don't have to type everything. As you're typing, you'll get suggestions. Take them up. Okay. So this is it. And as soon as we do that, we'll get the same kind of complaint we had gotten here. It will say must be declared abstract or implement the methods. We don't want an abstract class, we want to implement. So you could actually click here, implement methods, and it will give you a choice. You have to implement all of them, otherwise your class will continue to be abstract. Sometimes you may want an abstract class. Let's say you're creating an entire framework where you have everything, but the get item ID function is different for different children. Then you will ignore this and implement everything else, and then the class will be abstract, which means you will have to subclass it for each of the children. We'll just say okay, and it is going to implement all those methods for us. Stub implementation. So on create. So this is called as soon as your factory is created. So the widget is hosted in our launcher app in the home screen. It is going to call this function. It will send a message to the service called get view factory, and then this function will get called, and this is where we will create an instance of this in a moment. And when that happens, when it is created, if there is setup you need to do, for example, the example we just gave that you're fetching the weather data for different cities, you could do that here on create. So you're a step ahead. It is doing that in the background. It is getting the data, and it may take whatever time it takes. So those are the kind of setup you could do in onCreate. And there are all these other functions. So we'll come to that. Let's set up this get count. Okay. Now let's say we want to, I'm going to declare a variable here and give it a value of 6 integer. Number of images. So this is the number of images I want to show in the stack. In another app, if you were using this in an app, let's take that same example of tic-tac-toe. You would attach this adapter to whatever data you have stored in your, in the database. How many games have been played? You will actually retrieve that and send it. You will not have a static constant like 6 or 7. And then for each row, you will get, just like we did for the tic-tac-toe, we had that adapter which would read the data. And for each row, it said who won the game, what time it was played. All of those things you will do here. Today, what we want is we would just want to show a bunch of images. So let's do that. And then instead of returning a count of 0, we'll return number of images. So it shows 6 images. Now, this part is the other important part we need to implement. What is it that it is going to show? So we'll come to that. Let me just make sure that I'm not jumping the gun here. Okay. So we did this. We got rid of all the errors when we added by doing Alt Enter. Now we need to instantiate this demo widget stack views factory. Let's do that. So over here, instead of returning null, return an object of class. How do we instantiate this? Quite simple. Just create an object of the class and it is going to complain method call expected. Okay, this is the Swift syntax. Just need to add the keyword new. So it will create, and see, we don't have a constructor here, right? But in Java, all classes have a default constructor which takes no arguments. We don't have to actually declare one, at least not at this point. We may want to, as we will see later. So we've got this demo widget stack views factory. So we are instantiating an object. So now what happens is this service, when it is invoked, get view factory, it is going to return an object of this class. So this will know that there are num images, number of images, and what is in each object. We will implement that in a moment. Okay. So how to display images in the stack view? This is our stack. And that this is our stack. And we want to display one image at a time. So in Android, you have two choices. You could do it programmatically. You could create an image view and return it, populate it with an image and return it. The other choice, the preferred method is you add a new layout file and then add an image view to it, and then we will inflate it. Layout inflator is what we will do. So this is what we will do. So let's add a new layout file. So on your layout folder, you will right click and say new layout resource file. Second option. And the file name we will give is stack item. And root element, we don't want any root element. We'll just have, this file will have only an image view. That's it. We'll get rid of that root element and we'll say okay. This is what it should look like. Name of the file, no root element, and okay. Okay, root element is not specified. So I'm just going to leave it as constraint layout and we'll get rid of it after. I just did a command Z and it brought it back. So this is it. This is our step item. And here I will get rid of that constraint layout and we'll go with image view. And when we add an image view like this, it is going to complain a bunch of things here. Insert required attribute is what we will choose. And it probably won't work. We have to close this. Okay. Layout height and what was the other one? Layout width. Okay, right now it is complaining that we need a size. Here we'll give it a fixed size. Okay. Let's say I want an image of 200 pixels. And similarly, we'll add the width of 200 pixels and we'll add an ID. I'm going to call it stack image. Attribute Android namespace prefix. Okay, we are missing a bunch of prefixes here.
It should be Android colon layout underscore height.
Yes, and also we are missing the namespace declaration, so we'll add that. So this is the namespace declaration, and the way it gave me an option to add this, and without this, what happens is it does not understand a bunch of things like where is this going? It's going in that R class, right? It happens because of the namespace. All right. So this, what it does is we have created a stack item XML file, which is a layout, which has just an image view, a 200 pixels by 200 pixels image, and we've given it an ID. So this we have created, but we haven't used it anywhere yet. Right? So now what we want is we want to start using this. How will we use it? So what happens is this itself in our let's take a step back and look at the flow of how things happen. So when this home screen is displaying your widget, right now it instantiates this object demo app widget, which is actually app widget provider, and this is what it displays. So we overrode this in our layout file. Otherwise, it would display this example. So what is happening here is when your widget is being displayed, it comes here and it gets a function call to update app widget. This is what it displays. And this is where, see, it is creating an object of class remote views using this demo app widget that Android added for us. And originally it only had the text view. We added the stack view to it. So in your normal course of things, like if we were to go to the main activity, you will see how, see, this is the layout file, right? In the main activity, you call this set content view and you say the name of the layout file, which is this activity main. This is how your activity knows what is its layout. In the widget, you don't call set content view. Instead, what you do is you create an object of type remote views and you set it in the app widget manager. These are all static objects. You update this widget to have this view. So that's what has happened. This particular function call, it inflated this demo app widget, which has the stack view and the text view. Right now, the stack view is empty. It doesn't know what to do. So while the stack view is there, it doesn't know what is in it. It only knows about the text. You can actually manipulate the text here. App widget text. So this is outdated actually. We have already changed it from example to empty. App widget text, we have changed it to empty. So somehow Android is not keeping up with that. It should show empty here. This, whatever you see in this light green, it is a completion of whatever was there. See, Android does that magic for you in the background and it shows in light green background. So this is the value of this string. So instead of this, what we want is, just like we have access to the widget text, we have access to set, we can set an adapter. That's what we are doing here. This service here is our adapter. So we'll say set remote adapter. Okay, and what it wants is a view ID and an intent. So what is the view ID? r.id dot widget stack is the ID we gave it. If you go back here, stack, not stack item, demo app widget, you will see that our stack view has an ID called widget stack. And the adapter for this is what we want to set. So that's how we will do it. We'll say, okay, widget stack, and now here we need the adapter. So the big question now is, how do we access this demo widget stack service? So when you want to start a new activity, how do you do it? Do you remember, like any of the previous apps we did, if we wanted to go from one activity to another, what is the process?
We can use the intent to start a new activity.
Perfect. So in the same way, we want to use an intent to pass this as the service, as the adapter that it will use. So this is our, we'll create a new intent. What are the arguments we will give it? Okay. So this is where I would suggest we pass remote view service. Let's see what we get. So the idea is to create a new intent. What we need is the current context and the name of the class. And then we will set it as the adapter. So context should be available to here. And the name of the class, which is demo widget stack service. Okay. And this function, when we did set remote adapter, let me do it again. Views.set remote adapter. It takes two arguments, the view ID and the intent. The intent to the service that is going to furnish the adapter. So that is what we will pass here. So now what this did is it instantiates this for us in the background. This happens through the intent, and then it passes it along to the widget. And then the widget knows that this stack view, it has a view factory which is available to it. And that's when it starts asking those questions. How many cards in the stack? What is the first card and all that? So this is the setup we need. We need to create an intent to the service we have created and set that as the adapter. Otherwise, without these two lines, what is happening is that your XML file has the stack in it. The stack is there, but there is no connection to the rest of the code. It doesn't know what to do with the stack, so it just ignores it. It just shows you this text, whatever it is. It keeps saying example for some reason, but it is actually empty. We changed it. So that is what it does. So now by doing this, by adding these two lines, we have told this, we have given it this functionality. This stack, talk to this fellow here, get the information. Okay, I think I have gone further ahead. So set up the number of items in stack, inflate the view, return it as item. So, okay, what we have done is we have created the connection between the widget and the adapter. But within the adapter, we have not used this thing that we created. The stack item with the image view. And this is what needs to happen here. In get view at, we need to inflate stack item and return. Now, how does that happen? You see, remote views, if we go back to our previous file, you'll see how it was done here. You create a new remote views object and you pass it the layout, right? So what it needs is a context. Without that, it is not. So what does, can anyone tell me why you need a context? Why couldn't we have just said new remote views and given it the name of this file? So without the context is the context in which this app is running. And what you're saying is that there can be multiple contexts. But this particular file, demo app widget, belongs to this, the context of this application. So that's why we need that. So we'll repeat the same thing here. What we want is remote views. Let's call it just a view equal to new remote views. And we need the two arguments, the context and the, but you will see that we have no context here. And r dot id dot not id. We're talking about a layout here. So we want the layout called stack item. Okay. This is how it will create that view and send it off. and we'll return it as a view. But the problem is that we don't have a context. How do we get the context here? It needs to be passed to this. This object needs to have a context. So let's declare a variable called context. Okay, and because it is not imported in this file, you're getting this option. Whenever you see this, if you say Alt Enter, it's going to add it to the top. Okay, but this context is null right now. It is undefined. Okay, actually, we've got, hang on a second. We got the wrong type of context. No, it is android.content.context. Okay. So we need this to be passed to this class. When we are instantiating it, we are not passing anything here. Instead of this, we need to pass the application context. This is how you will access it. Get application context. It is complaining because we don't have a constructor here that takes the context. So we'll just define a constructor demo widget stack views factory that takes in a context. And we will assign it to the class variable. Do you see the steps that happen? To be able to access the layout file, we need a context. Why is it still complaining? Cannot resolve constructor remote views. Okay, maybe I'm using a constructor when I need to create a view using another method. Let's go back here and see. New remote views. Okay, okay. It needs a package name. My mistake. Just context is not enough. We need a package name. It is expecting a string. So we'll get package name and this will get resolved. So it needs the package name within which it locates this. So to be able to access this stack item, we need a package name and then we are able to create a remote view. And this remote view is now accessing the stack item layout, which is just an image view. Any questions so far?
My code cannot access a stack item. For some reason, when I do r.layout dot, it only shows me activity main and demo app widget.
Yeah, this is Android issue. Just type stack item. Even if it shows up in red, don't worry.
Okay.
It will still compile. Just like I showed you earlier, right? That it was showing somewhere it was complaining that I don't have something and it still compiled. Just type it in. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Can you also scroll up? I want to see the demo widget stack factory context function you wrote. So you just assign like this context to the context. Okay.
Yes, because see, this is the local variable that is coming through. This is the class variable. We want to assign the class variable to the local. That's why we have to say this dot context.
Yeah.
And then you will use this constructor instead of the empty one. You will pass it the context. So this now more or less completes the setup. Let's see what else. Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, sir, I have a question as well.
Yes, Hamza.
Yeah, I need to in our demo widget stack service class, we could get the application context by this dot get application context. Why can't we directly do it in our demo widget stack views factory class?
Because this is an independent class on its own.
Okay.
It does not have access to anything other than what it inherits from this. And this is an interface. It has nothing to really give it. So there is no context here available to it. That's why we need to pass it.
Okay.
It's a class on its own, right? It's separate from this. We just put it in the same file. We could have put it in another file called demo widget stack views factory.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay. So far, so good. Let's see what presentation says. Okay. Setup number of items, inflate the view just created. This is what we did using the remote views. Implement the functionality to return the stack and set its adapter. So this is what we did previously over here. We set the adapter through this set remote adapter for the stack. Okay. Now the big question is, are we all set? We are not. So what happens is that this service, though we have created it, demo widget service, we haven't told the world about it. So those kind of things happen in the Android manifest. If we go here, oh, we should have watched this before we added the widget. Before we added the widget, this part was not there. It only said this main activity and what it does, right? And then we added the widget, and this is how the Android operating system knows that this app has a widget that can be added to the home screen or wherever else. That's why it shows up in that list of widgets when we press and hold and look at the list of widgets. So we have so many other apps, but not everything shows up in that list. Only those apps which have this in the manifest will show up. And how do they know this? Because intent has a filter called it is an app widget. It receives this action app widget update. So in the same way here, we need to say that there is a service also that is exposed in this application. So that that widget, when it is added, it will look at this and oh yeah, I have access to this service. What is that service? Use a service, remote view service that we have already set up. Add the service element to the widget in the manifest to give it ability to bind views remotely. So we need to add this part. So this is the class we have created, and we need to say that this is what this class does. It gives access to this remote view service, allowing binding of remote views. So we will add this to our widget. Okay, this is the wrong place. Service goes here outside the activity. So as I'm typing, see, it is giving me auto completion. That's the only service available within this package. So we'll select it. And what is the type? What is the permission? It does bind remote views. Android permission, bind remote views. Android dot permission dot bind remote views. There may be other types of services you can expose. And this is how you would do it in your app. If your app provides other things for, for the operating system or other apps to communicate with your app, you can expose them as services. So this is what it is, Android permission bind remote views. So now what happens is that your widget has access to this service. Without this line, even though you have the service, it is not exposed. Your widget cannot call, cannot, because this permission was missing. Okay. Let's run our app. We haven't run it for a while. Let's see what trouble we have gotten ourselves into by now. Okay, so this is the app. I'm going to go to the home screen, and this is the still the same. There's nothing, no change. Right? Why is that? Because one reason, because we don't have any images. Okay, so I am missing one step here. Let's add something, add some images, right? So this stack item, right? We have inflated it here. Now we want to set an image to this. So if I say remote views, okay, let's do it more systematically. I will show you the documentation for this class remote views, and you will see how you can manipulate what is in this layout as a remote view. We have it open here, remote views. So remote views, we have inflated that layout and created a remote view. This is what we did, basically. From the layout file we created. And now this allows us to do certain things. What we are interested in is things like set float. You can assign a float value to a view that is inside that layout file. We have only an image view, but we could have had, for example, there is set text, set string, one string to a view. So if we had a text view in there, in this file where we have the image view stack item, if we had a text view, we could change its text through that. And this is, you see, this is slightly different from how we have worked with views in Android. You just say view.setText. Here, no, you don't have access to that. Here it is a remote view because it is being displayed remotely. So whatever is inside it, we access using this. So here, instead of, that in Android, we would have said get find view by ID and we'll give it an ID, r.id.myText. And then you will say my text, whatever the variable name was, dot set text, and you will set a text. In remote views, you do it differently. You call the set string method and you set its value. Or you can use this set text view text. And see, it says here equivalent to calling text views set text method. So in the same way here, what we are looking for is set image. There are these bunch of functions here. Set image view bitmap. So if I had a bitmap and the view ID, I could set the image, the bitmap, the actual image. You can call this icon. You can use a resource, set image view resource, and you can use a resource ID. So r dot ID dot whatever it may be. Actually, no, this is a source ID. It's slightly different. So this is what we will do. We'll call set image view resource. So in here, right now we have this. We can say view dot set image view resource. So our ID for that is stack image, the image view. This is the ID we gave it, stack image. Now we want to change its image. That's what we are doing. We want to give it an image. And the images you will generally find are in a folder called drawable. Right? And right now there is here something called example. What is this? You double click, you will say it says example. Fine. We'll try to use this. See what happens. So this is in a drawable, right? So everything that is in drawable, we access using r.drawable, just like we access things in layout using r.layout. So drawable dot this. This is my, so I'm just setting the same image for all the function calls, all the positions. This is what it should do. Let's run it and see what happens. It's done something. Instead of showing me the example, it is showing me loading. Okay. There's some other setup that is missing. Let's see what are these functions. We need to change some of these here. View type count. How many types of views are there? Get item ID. In our case, the same function received written that. But let's look at the documentation. We need to use factory. Is our remote views service, and this has an inner interface called remote views factory. We'll look at its documentation. So get view type count. What is this? Number of types of views that will be returned by this factory. Right now it says 0. I think I moved too fast. Let me just let you also read it. This is the one that we are doing. Get view type count. If you say 0, it doesn't know anything. It thinks that you have no views. So we'll return 1. We have only one type of views that this will return. So this adapter knows that. And get loading view, what does it do? Get view at is what we implemented, get loading view. This allows for the use of a custom loading view which appears between the time that get view is called and returns. If null is returned, a default loading view will be used. So that is why we saw that default loading view, just say loading dot dot dot. Okay. So now we have view type count as 1. We'll leave that as now. We don't mind the default. Okay. Let's run it now and see if we start seeing the actual images that we are supplying instead of, not images, the image, that the example image we just picked up from there. Oops. Okay, this is it. This is our stack view. You see, we gave it only that. You have to be careful here. In the emulator, it's very sensitive. If I drag somewhere else other than the image, it thinks I'm trying to move the widget. Okay. So it shows me the stack of cards and it lets me view one after the other, right? Everybody up to this point? Anybody not up to this point, please speak up in the chat if you are.
For me, I cannot see the image. I don't know why.
You cannot see.
Oh, now I can see the image. Sorry, probably it's just loading. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Professor, can you please open your demo widget stack service file?
Yes. Where in this file?
The top set top.
Okay, so in the top, the most recent change we made was this. That in the constructor, we are passing the application context. And we added that constructor here.
Okay.
Can you show the rest of that file after? I'm just going to take a screenshot. I fell behind.
No worries, yeah, I will. So here, what we did is we implemented this function and we changed the return value for both of these functions. Get view type count, we set it to one type of view, and item ID, same as whatever is coming in, the same ID we want to return. So each item has an ID and it is the same as its position. Okay, Aniket, do you need to see anything else here?
Nope, sir, I'm done.
Thank you.
So let's go back to our presentation and see. Okay, so this is what we are getting now, pretty much, right? Example, 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 example. So now you have a choice. You can get a bunch of images, your own, whatever images you like. You have a niece or a nephew and you want to send them an app with their own pictures, you can do that. It will show up on their phone, they can scroll through that, stuff like that. These are some images, public domain images that I found on the internet. I'm going to use these. So what you need is a bunch of such images, and if you guys want to use the same images, I can upload them to Blackboard and you will get them. You want to find who wants to use these images that I've got here?
I do.
So I'll package them and upload them to Blackboard. And what we have is, what you do is you save whatever images you're using, you save them, give them whatever file name you like. But I think the best is if you have a numbered set like img underscore 1, 2, 3, like that. So here is, why can't I find it? Okay, I'll have to find it before I can upload them. Oh, there they are. That was easy. But these are not the full size images that they'll have to do. Just give me 1 second. I wasn't prepared for this. I want to give them to you. Okay. Compress. You still have Blackboard open. Okay. So this is now available in weekly learning images for week 1. And what are we going to do with this? We have this drawable folder, right? Once you have those images, you uncompress them and then you select all 6 of them and you drag and drop it on this drawable. and it's going to give you some options. Just say okay to that, and there you are. It should have all 6 of those files for you. These are really tiny. I don't know what happened to them, why they're so small, but it's okay. At this point, what do we want? What we want is we want to, instead of using this example image that we used everywhere, we want to be able to set, this is the example. Instead of this, we want to be able to set that whatever the ID is, right? img1 for when I is equal to 1, we want to use the first image. I equal to 2, we want to use the second image, like that. That's what we want to do. So to do that, what we want, what happens is that r dot, if I say drawable, it gives me these options. But these are all, predetermined. I cannot say img plus I, for example. It doesn't work like that. So I have to construct this ID and then request whatever is it in that ID. So using the string, so what is, let's do string image ID equal to img underscore plus I. This is the what I want to access. Now, how do I access this? For that, we need to basically do some more magic, in the sense that r dot drawable dot stuff will not work. We need to ask the system to look for the the image based on an ID that is a variable, that is an Android variable. That's what we want. And these are things that, some of you're a lot younger than I am, you will remember these things. For me, I know what is needed to be done, but I won't remember the syntax. So what I would do is, typically I would Google it, and this is what I would have Googled: Android get resource from string, getting resource ID from string. This is the exact problem we are trying to solve. And you'll get a bunch of answers. You choose the one that you like and you use it. So all these people, what they've done is they have created, very complex functions, and they're calling those functions. And they're complex because they take care of things like, what happens if your ID, that file does not exist? Then you need to, catch an exception. But this is all optional. In our case, what we can do is call this function get resources dot get identifier, and then, whatever is needed. So what is the variable name? In our case, it will be img 1234, whatever it was, the package, which is the drawable, or the set there, and the package name. This is what we need to do. I'm going to copy this part and paste it here in a comment, so I know the syntax, right? So you see, good thing is that we have a context available to us here, because these functions get resource ID. If I start typing there is no get resource ID, but oh, I'm sorry, my mistake. Get resource ID is what this guy has created, but internally he's calling get resources dot get identifier. This is what I should copy there. So this is what I want to do. Get resources dot get identifier, and then what is my variable name? Image ID, this one here. And it is a part of drawable. And the package name, just like we did here, context dot get package name. This what it does now is instead of setting every time setting the example image is the image, it's going to set the first card will become image 1, the second card will become image 2. Once you have this much and you run it, you should see that click this, there it is. Right? I can actually, now let's see, we talked about that resizable business, right? I can make this bigger and let's see if it refreshes itself. No. So here there are a few more things we need to do. Right now you see once you're on the last image, you can't do anything. Whereas this same functionality here that the other implementation, the images, they keep coming back. For example, these mountains, if I drop it 2 or 3, they'll come back at the back. So the stack is looping through. We need to enable that. That's one of the things we will do in our new app here. And the other one is we want to get rid of this empty when there are images and only show it when there are no images. So these are the two things we will do now. Let's see if we have any. I don't know if I have any slides about that. Okay, so no, don't have a slide about that. Let's do that. So for the stack view, we'll go here. Loop views. So Android has a variable called loop views, and you set this to true. This will take care of that thing that the image that is removed from the top of the deck goes to the bottom. It keeps looping. This is one part. You can run your app and see that that has started happening. So okay. There's one more problem. I don't know if you know.
See the resource, what do you call? The get identifier thing you wrote. I
Yeah.
need to see the last argument. What's after drawable? The definition. Okay, it's just
Now?
package name. Yeah.
There is one more issue. So this I goes from 0 to n minus 1. And our image numbers, they start with 1. They don't start with 0. We need to adjust for that. So let's say int num equal to I minus 1 and use that num here. So that way, otherwise our first image is not showing up. Not the first. The last image won't show up. And you can verify that by if you before you make that change, you see how many images you're seeing. Are you seeing 6 or 5? Okay. So far, so good. The one other thing that I mentioned we want to do is we want to here, right? Set remote view adapter. This part is actually not doing anything. We could even comment it out. Let's see, views dot set. Okay. You see, when you say views dot set, it gives you all the completion. There is something called an empty view. Right now, that thing that says empty is showing up all the time. We want it to show up only when the stack is empty. So we'll use this set empty view and ID. It's called no, empty view ID. Okay, this is okay. I'm going to leave it here for now. We're getting closer to the end of the class. I don't want to start something that will take longer than we have time to explain. So that part, how about this? You know, this is what you have to do. You have to call set empty view. We'll leave that as a homework. You figure out what you need to do so that when you're running when your widget is being shown, this text view that says empty, it doesn't show up if there are images, in which in our case will be always, because we have hard images. It should look like background here. We have a light pink background. You can also get rid of that. That way it will be seamless. That's the word I'm looking for. It will show up on your home screen and it will be interactive. So this is what it will become here. Okay. We are at 12:49. So what I will do is I'm going to, talk about some of these things at the beginning of the next class. I don't want to rush it. But what I will do is I will emphasize something, things that you need to do. So there is this is what you can look up. I'll post this as in Blackboard as a separate item as text. How will you do this? For example, click an item in a collection widget to things specific to that item. For example, our images, if you whatever item is currently at the top, if you it should show a blow up of just that image. That's one example. The other is if you have a Gmail widget, you the emails. You don't want the Gmail app to open. You want the Gmail app to open with that email showing. How will you do that? This is what you can do some self-study on. And the other one, what is meant by a widget host? What are they and how they are developed? So this is, building on today. This will leave as self-study. And for homework, these questions that we talked about earlier about frame layout, relative layout, and why this continues to show example in your list of, and how will you change it. And we add empty view. Complete the show empty view coding. So these will be the three parts of your homework. Okay. Brings today's topic, and actually we made very good progress. I just want some, well, I want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions. If you have, then I have one question. Anybody have questions?
I just have a question regarding this homework. So if there are no images, do we still show the background color or do we just show the text empty? Because I just removed the background color, so the empty looks like, if there are no images, then empty just looks like a text in the middle of the screen that doesn't show anything, mean anything. So
Okay, so that is up to you. I just want you to know how to do that.
okay,
You can leave it with the background, without the background, doesn't matter. But the idea is that this empty should not show when there are images.
okay.
Any other questions?
So is it supposed to show if there are no images as well, or can we just remove it?
No, it should show if there are no images, it should show as empty.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So the question I have is, what's the pace of the class? Was it too fast, too slow? Just okay, just right.
For me, it was a little fast, but I'm a slow typer.
Okay, no, that's good to know that if I can slow down a little bit more, it's more important to that everybody understands rather than we, just cover the topics. It's not a checklist we are building. So yeah, you can even, you can ask me to slow down, or you can, if there are things that you are not able to type, keep up, you can just, just like other people were saying, can you please show that again? You can do that, Michelle, and
Okay, all right, thank you.
it's also good for everybody else also, if, if we pace it in a way. Okay. For the others, it was okay. Any other suggestions? All right. So we will stop here. And next week is when I will talk about the group projects. So you can, next week onwards, you can start thinking about it, start working on it. And I will see you guys in the next class.
All right.
All right. Bye.
So